It's really good to see you there, and such kudos
Very nice
for
to
the
be here.
book. Can I just start by asking how you are? How are you feeling?
I'm okay, you know. I mean, I think I'm surprised myself by how well I feel. I think I'm pretty much repaired. Thank you.
And I mean, the repair takes up a lot of the book. It took a lot of time, and we can see that, you know, your eye, one of your eyes is, you've lost the vision and you're wearing a, you know, dark glass in that eye, and we know that you were stabbed so many times. You say in the book, I saw this murderous shape rushing towards me. So it's you, you thought, here you are. I know you've been asked many, many times, but that moment, those 27 seconds that you enumerate in what you call an intimate and deathly connection.
Yes. Sorry, I've lost the sound.
No worries. I'm gonna move on. Can you hear me now, Salman?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going
Yes,
to
I
ask you.
can.
I'm going to ask you. I was about to ask you at that moment, but I want to ask you to read, in fact, one of the passages that you write about how seriously you were wounded, and you imagine it through the eyes of those around you. Could you read that
Yes.
passage?
Yes. They were looking at what I couldn't see, me. My neck and cheek on the right side had been slashed open by the knife, and they could see that both sides of the cut were being held together by metal staples. There was a long horizontal gash along my neck under my chin, and that was being held together by staples too. They could see that the whole neck area was grotesquely swollen and darkly bloodied. They could see that the dried blood of the wound in my left hand looked almost like stigmata. Around the wound were bandages, and the hand was held stiffly in a splint. And when the nurse came in to tend to my ruined eye, Eliza and the others saw what looked like a sci-fi movie special effect, the eye hugely distended, bulging out of its socket and hanging down on my face like a large, soft-boiled egg. The swelling was so bad that the doctors didn't even know in these first days if I still had an eyelid.
I mean, it's such a graphic description, and you really, you know, you didn't. Eliza, your wife, wouldn't even let there be mirrors anywhere near you. But you talk about the miracle of how the love of your family, the skill of the surgeons, and your friends brought you through. That you technically maybe shouldn't even be alive today. Talk about the miracle of the healing.
Yeah, I mean, I say somewhere in the book that I've always believed that love is a force, you know, and when it's unleashed, it can actually have a powerful effect in the real world. It can change things. And I have no doubt that the amount of love and support and solidarity and affection that I was shown, first by Eliza and my family, and then beyond that by the wider world, people I don't know, had an enormous impact on me and helped me have the strength to recover.
Salman, I find it really interesting because you say you don't believe in miracles, and you you also, you know, admit that your recovery is miraculous. But also you say you don't believe in premonitions, and you did have something that we might call a premonition or a dream just before going to Chautauqua, just before going to make this speech. We've asked you to read just a little bit of that graph.
Yeah, I had a nightmare. 2 nights before I flew to Chautauqua, I had a dream about being attacked by a man with a spear, a gladiator in a Roman amphitheater. There was an audience roaring for blood. I was rolling about on the ground, trying to escape the gladiator's downward thrusts and screaming. It was not the first time I'd had such a dream. On 2 earlier occasions, as my dream self rolled frantically around, my actual sleeping self, also screaming, threw its body, my body, out of bed, and I awoke as I crashed painfully to the bedroom floor.
So those were those 2 times. This time your wife woke you up and you didn't crash to the floor, but you said to her, I don't want to go. Honestly, it gives me chills, that.
Yeah, I was very spooked by the dream. And that's what my initial response was, to say, look, I don't want to go. And then, I woke up a bit more and I thought, really, we don't run our lives on the basis of whether we had a bad dream or not. And it's just a dream. And of course I should go. But in retrospect, I'd have done well to pay attention to the dream.
And again, you don't believe in premonitions or foreshadowings, as you write.
No.
But why not?
Well, because you can rationalize these things. The place I knew that the place I was going to speak in was called an amphitheater. And we all know from movies and so on, what happens in amphitheaters and arenas in classical times is this kind of combat. So, and as I say, over the years, worrying about the attack on the Satanic Verses, I had dreams every so often about being attacked. And I'd learned to just deal with them. They're just kind of a traumatic dream. I don't have to believe them. This time, unfortunately, it came true.
Salman, you talk about the A, that is the assailant, the assassin, the ass, the asinine. You call him the A throughout. You don't use his name. You describe him as a murderous ghost from the past. And I found it really interesting that in the book, and in your life, you grappled with whether at some point, I mean, quite early on, before you even recovered, you were grappling with whether you should go to see him, confront him, talk to him, understand his motivation.
Yeah. I mean, that was my first thought, was as a kind of journalistic impulse to go and sit in a room with him and say, okay, tell me why you did it. And I was disabused of that. First of all, it seemed very improbable that his legal representation would agree to that. Eliza was very against it. And then, I read this story of Samuel Beckett, who was also stabbed in Paris in a street by a pimp. And he actually did go to the court and asked the man, why did you do it? And all the man said was, I don't know, sir, I'm sorry. And I thought, well, that doesn't get you very far, does it? It doesn't explain anything. And I thought maybe if I did meet this guy, I would get some banality of that kind. I didn't think I would get remorse. There doesn't seem to be any sign of remorse. But I thought I'd get some cliche. And so pointless. And I thought actually I would do better to use the skill I've got of imagination and storytelling to try and imagine myself into his head and work out a kind of coherent portrait of somebody who could have done this.
It's really interesting, that chapter. And I want to ask you, because I think we know, because the assailant gave an interview to one of the New York tabloids, that he didn't read the Satanic Verses. He didn't sound like he had any motivation for this.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't read. He said he had read 2 pages of something I'd written. He didn't say what. And that he'd seen a couple of YouTube videos. And that was enough for him to decide to commit murder. I mean, it shows me that indoctrination can be a very powerful force. And there are people, like I suspect this young man of being, who kind of need to be led, who need to be given a direction in life because they don't feel that they have it. And something put the thought in his head. Clearly he said he was an admirer of Khomeini and so on. So clearly he was thinking along those lines. And at some point, he heard about me giving a speech at Chautauqua and decided that I was his target. It's kind of a mystery why it turned out to be me.
Yeah. And you divide the book into 2 distinct chapters, the chapter of hate and death and the chapter of life and love. And you talk a lot about, your wife, about your family. But writing about happiness, I like this little bit. You said, I've always been interested in writing about happiness, in large part because it's extremely difficult to do. And you quote a previous writer from yesteryear, saying that it's like writing with white ink on a white page. So do you think you actually succeeded in writing about your happiness in the second half of the book?
Well, you tell me, Christiana, but I think I did. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I think you
it's for
did.
the reader to judge.
I think you
I
did.
think it's for the reader to judge. Thank you. Well, I mean, I think it was. We had. I mean, Eliza and I had been together for 5.5 years before the attack happened, and we had had a very happy life, and it was as if we were in a love story, and then somebody tried to turn that into a murder story, and then we worked very hard to turn it back into a love story. So it's I say in the book that, yes, we did manage, I think, to reconstruct our happiness, but it wasn't exactly the same as it had been. That there's a kind of shadow in it. There's what I describe it as a wounded happiness, but happiness nevertheless.